Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we finally have from Anna von Hausswolff Iconoclasts. It's been over 7 years since I last touched on Anna von Hausswolff and Dead Magic back in the Trailing Edge in 2018, where I may have missed the point. Part of this came from me only starting to get more into ambient and drone music, where I was drawn more at the time to melodic song structure instead of texture and soundscape. We're going back to Dead Magic now, I think I better appreciate the extended gothic sprawl, the slow churn of the groove, and the more spare, abstract writing to take advantage of von Hausswolff's tremendous voice. I do appreciate it more, but I also did skip past that instrumental minimalist drone project back in 2020, and when this new album was getting a return to acclaim for its intensity and power, I was interested, yet that's probably not what I would praise the most out of this album, which in an interesting turn is probably the most accessible that she's delivered in over a decade. As such, it can't help but feel like a culmination. The melodic hooks and strident, trilling delivery of her earliest work, paired with the production refinement and enormous atmosphere of her later albums, especially when you have that thematic arc that feels so portentous, with many songs focused on breaking free of immense psychological burdens, be they toxic relationships or something more existential or spiritual or vulnerable. And really, in terms of pure emotion, how different really are those experiences, especially when extrication can come with ostracization, branded as heresy or, well, iconoclastic. She's described being as an iconoclast, less provocateur, more thinker with intention, who winds up setting up a new dialectic with the status quo. And that's all set up for a tremendous, moving project. And once you get past Iggy Pop doing a truly lousy Nick Cave impression on The Whole Woman, it could not have been that difficult for von Hausswolff to get Nick Cave on board with this. He has shown himself willing to show up for a whole lot worse. I was really set to love this, and yet, the more listens I gave Iconoclast, the less I was convinced it works as a whole, which was extremely frustrating given how much I was really set up to love it. Part of this is the niggling thought that trying to get more extended drone structures to fit more accessible hooks can be a very mixed bag, especially as this album has a fair few instrumental cuts alongside extended, lingering passages within songs, and the crescendos don't always feel like they add up to more across an album that runs well over an hour. With probably the best examples of handling multiple crescendos and nailing the mood is the genuinely impressive 11-minute The Iconoclast, longest song on the album. As the guitars seethe, they build to a really good horn-driven change-up, only for the song then to reconstitute itself as the strings and drums crash back, and the song ends within cycles of arpeggios. And I really like the ragged strums alongside the steady knock of Facing Atlas that has some explosive build, the more dynamic textured drums of Stardust alongside the gurgling low end and wild cycling melodies and key changes. But I've always preferred ambient music to drone as it is, and especially on the back half, this album really proves as to why. But it also runs a little deeper, because once you become familiar with the melodic progressions and the experimentation that von Hausswolff embraces, it doesn't quite feel as viscerally challenging to live up to the title or the album art, and really the make or break comes down to the biggest new addition to her arsenal, that saxophone. And maybe it's a bit of overexposure having heard that Maruja album this year, the frustrating fact that while von Hausswolff tends to be much better in giving the low end of that saxophone some ominous swell, give the horns a feel of that impending dread alongside the orchestral arrangement, once I hear a lot more of that arpeggiated Colin Stetson-esque progression, it's a flourish that just has really diminishing returns for me, especially when you hear it amidst all of the woodwinds across this album hitting a very similar motif over and over again. And once you hear some of that musical comfort zone materialize, a shimmering gloss that seems to blunt any deeper muscle or grit or distortion, yet still can't stop von Hausswolff's voice or multi-tracking from occasionally peaking in the mix, or how broadly sketched a lot of the writing is, well, it's an album that wants to be this free thinker against the status quo, but what are actually those thoughts or big bigger ideas within the text of the album that will rise to the challenge. There is something to capturing the primal, emotional experience and release of having that iconoclastic thought, but outside of broadly sketched affirmations of love and peace and looking for a brighter future, with aging young woman with Ethel, Cain of all people, circling the weaponization of religion, probably landing a fair bit sharper and feeling more personal given how von Hausswolff got protested by hardline fundamentalist Catholics, and then Stardust brushing against some environmentalism, and Struggle with the Beast drawing on a friend's sudden onset of psychosis amidst probably the stickiest horn progression on the entire album in trying to capture how some of those around you might worry about one's sudden embrace of being a iconoclast thinker. I just really wish the poetry could build to more, say a little more, even if she is breaking up with language. The mouth gets close to capturing something more eerie and primal with the organ and the shuddering breakdown, just never fully coalesces for me. Because it's not like we've been short on subject matter and material that taps into similar emotions and intensity. I kept thinking about Florence and the Machine's Everybody Scream from earlier this year, given an analogous fusion of more conventional art rock and Swan's inspirations. And while I probably like this more than what Michael Gira put out this year, at their best, Swans tended to remember the bass grooves a bit more consistently. Von Hausswolff nails the drums. I love how booming and imposing the percussion is. There's some real complexity there, but the meteor low end can feel a little underpowered. And that's the weird thing about Iconoclast. At its strongest moments, it captures a pretty striking emotionality. The songs feel huge and primal and sweeping, really exceptional. They provide that anchor of the transgression without even needing the details, whatever it might be. But once you start digging into the details beyond the sense of scope, it feels like there's a lot less meat on the bone, and a lot of the ideas and evocative imagery gestured at, but rarely explored as deeply as they could be. A very studied and approachable version of truly ripping loose. And make no mistake, that doesn't have to make it a bad thing at all. I like that von Hausswolff can straddle that balance of accessibility. It tends to lead to the best moments on this album. But around that is a project that feels bloated in the runtime, but underpowered in groove, and ironically a little bit toothless, where it doesn't feel transgressive nor all that challenging, especially given what it's trying to attempt, especially compared to the heavier drones and darker material she had with Dead Magic, which does not have this album's high points, but is also way more consistent. Look, I do think this is very good. It's worth a decent amount of the critical acclaim it's received. If you got time for the best moments, no matter how extended they are worth it. I just struggle to call the whole thing great, or that it really lives up to its title. That's all. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Yes, I know this is going to be a little bit contentious. Trust me, folks, I really want to love this album. I put this alongside Nico Case or Florence and the Machine, and there's a similar sonic backdrop, and there's a similar sense of scope, and I love her voice so much, and yet I feel like some of these songs structurally and composition and a couple niggling production issues and the writing not quite having as much meat to it as it could, it just holds it back a little bit for me. It's more about the pure raw experience, that level of abstraction. I understand that. That's where the best moments come. It's just not consistent. But hey, leave your comments down there below. Happy to hear from y'all. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. If y'all want to get involved and help and support the channel, get albums on my schedule in the new year, potentially see some new year and list videos a little bit earlier than others, you never know, or just argue with me on my Discord, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, I understand, recession's coming, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.